Hi everyone, hope that you all are doing well. So in my last video we discussed about Spring Batch, that what is Spring Batch, and implemented a hello world example using Spring Batch. If you haven't watched that video, the link would be in the description and the I button. Please do watch. Today let's implement ETL using Spring Batch, that is extract, transform and load. But before we jump into the video's context, let me request you, if you find my videos knowledgeable, please do hit like, share and comment on the video. And if new to the channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon. So today let's read a CSV file and transform few fields and put it into MySQL database. So let's go on the ID. I'm on my ID. Let's create a new project. Let's take Spring Starter project. Let's name the project as Spring Batch ETL, right? And the Java version is 21 and the packages are com.code with implementation. Let's go next and add dependency. So we require the Spring Web dependency. As in today's example, I'll be running the job through REST controller. If you go back to my previous video, you might have seen that I was running the job through command line runner, but in today's example I'll run the job through REST control. So I need a Spring Web to create a REST API, and I need the MySQL driver, as I'll be inputting the data into MySQL driver. And then I need a Spring Batch dependency. So let me get the Spring Batch dependency as well, and one more dependency, that is Open CSV dependency, that is not present in this environment, so I'll add it externally when the project is imported. So let me import the project. So my project is ready and imported to the ID. Let's go to pom.xml and let me add the CSV dependency as well. So you can go to the Maven repository and copy the CSV dependency. So this is the CSV dependency. So we require this dependency to actually enable our application to read CSV files or work on the CSV file. So this is my dependency. Now I'm ready with my all the dependencies. So as the example says that we have to load the data to a database, so we need an entity, right? So you might be confused that we didn't use the JPA dependency, as we will be creating the table manually. We'll not be depending on the JPA to create the table. So let's first create a package for model, and let's create a model. Let's say model, and in the model package let's create a class that is users. So we have created a user, right? Users, and this will act as a POJO for our database. So we'll create a table in our database naming users, and then we can have those fields, right? So I'll create that table later on, but we can add some fields here. So we can define like private string start int, right? So these are the fields that I require in my POJO, and these will be present in my database as well. So let me now go to source and let me create the getters and setters for this. Let me say select all and let me generate getters and setters, right? So this is my model, right? So this will get filled up in the database when I'll be processing the data through the CSV file, and then using the job or using the writer of the job, we'll be updating this table, right? So this is my model prepared. Now let's go and let's simply create a package of configuration and create a class of batch config. So let me say config package, and in my config package I need a class that is batch config, right? So here first of all we need to mark this as @configuration. So many of the things would be repeated from the previous video, so you can go and check that first. You will get a clear idea of how we are implementing this job. So we need a few injections in our batch config, as we did in the previous video as well, that is the job repository, just to tell that this is how you should connect to the database, to our job. Let me define it, a job repository. Then we need a transaction platform, or platform transaction manager, and we can say transaction manager, right? And then we need to have a data source, right? So I'll say data source, right? So these are the three injections that we require. And now as I'll be doing a constructor injection, so let me create a constructor using the fields and let me generate it, right? So this is my constructor. So this is my constructor injection. Now we need to create beans of reader, writer and processor. So let me simply create a bean. So here as we will create a reader, we are working on CSV file, right, not on the database. So here the object that a reader would be returning would be a flat file, right? So flat file examples are like if we are working on CSV file, Excel file, or a text file, right? So those are flat files. So we need a flat file item reader. So we will be returning a flat file item reader, right? Flat file item reader, right? And the input would be of user, right? And we can define a reader method here, and let me import the user. So reader method has been defined. Now what we have to do is we have to basically read a CSV file and take out the data that we want to put it into a database. So how we'll do it, we'll be using flat file item reader builder. So what we are doing here in the reader file is like we have to return a flat file item reader as we are working on the CSV file. So flat file item reader examples are like if we are working on CSV file or a text file or a Excel file. So we have to return a reader object as a flat file item reader. So here we'll be using a flat file item builder, right? Item reader builder, and then we have passed a name to our reader, that is CSV reader. Then we are passing the resource in the sense that from where the file would be picked, right? So we are saying that the class path only. So it will be picked from the class path resource, and the name of the file would be users.csv. We are skipping the first line, as this first line will be containing the headers like first name, last name, email, age, right? So we have to skip that. We don't have to insert that into our database. And then we are using the delimited, and then we are passing the names like what all values it will be picking. Like first name would be having some values, last name would be having some value, email would be having some value, age would be having some values, right? And then we are mapping it to users class, right? So we are basically saying field set mapper. We are calling a field set mapper, and we are using a bean wrapper field mapper to set the target type, right? So we are setting the target type at user.class. So users contains our same fields that would be present in our CSV file, right? So we are saying that the set target would be of users.class, and then we are building the object. So this is how our reader would be created. And now we need to create another bean for process. So like here we need to simply say item processor, and here we'll be passing users comma users, and we'll say process. This is a method, or rather processor. That here we can say return user, and in the user we can say user dot set first name. Here in the process what we are doing is that we are reading the data from the CSV file, and we are saying that the first name would be in the uppercase. So what we will do, we will set the first name as an uppercase. So we'll say user dot get first name dot to uppercase, right? So it will be setting the name to the uppercase, right? And here what we'll do, we'll simply return user, right? So we can close this. So this is my item processor. So here in the process what we are doing, we are reading the data from the XML file. In the process we are just saying that our first name would be in the uppercase before the insertion of the into database. So we are doing that. We are doing the uppercase of the first name, right? So now we need to create another bean, right? We need to create another bean. So we'll say another bean that is public. Sorry, while we are writing a writer, we have used in the previous video as well JDBC item writer, right? So we'll see batch item writer, right? And we'll pass it as a users, right? And we'll say writer, and here we will be returning you JD item batch item writer builder, right? And the builder also we need to tell that which type. So it would be of users. Then we'll pass the data source. We have the data source in, and then we will be passing the SQL, that which SQL query would be running, right? So we will be passing an insert query. This is my SQL, and then we will be saying bean mapped, then we will be saying build, right? So this is my writer. So writer would be basically having a data source that is a connection to the database, and then it will be running an insert query, naming first name, last name, email, age, right? And it will be having the values as first name, last name, email, age, and it will be mapping it to the bean, and then it will be building it, right? So we will be having a object inserted into our database, right? So this is my writer bean. Now I need to have a step bean as well, so we need to have a step as well. So let me write public step. So we'll be returning a step object. So the step would be basically having our all the steps that need to be performed, right? I mistaked it. Let me do public step. I also need to import step. So here we will be saying return new step builder, right? Step builder, and in the step builder we will be passing some name to the step. We can say CSV2 database step, right? And here we need to pass the job repository. Then we need to pass the type, that is the users, and then we need to pass the chunk. Not needed. We need to pass the chunk method, and in the chunk method we need to pass the transaction manager and the chunk size. Then for the reader it will be calling a reader method, right? And for the processor, it will be calling the processor method, and for the writer it will be calling the writer method, right? And then we can simply say build, right? So this is my step. So we are saying that the step would be named as CSV2 database step. We are passing the job repository, and then we are also giving a chunk of 10, and we are passing the transaction manager. So chunk of 10 data would be picked at first, and then all these steps would be performed: reader, processor, writer, and build, right? So we are done with the step part as well. So let me now create another bean of, let's say we also need a job, right? So let me say job. So in the job we have to trigger the job, right? So we'll say return job builder. So we need a job builder, and in the job builder we need to pass some. We can simply name it as on the same context CSV2 database job, and we need a job repository here. Then we need to pass the step or start, sorry, we need to pass the start, and in the start we need to pass the step method, right? And then we can simply say build, right? So this is the job, right? So we are now done with the configuration part. We have written the batch configuration. So here is my reader, right? First is my injection into the in my config file. Then there is my reader. We are using the flat file item reader because we are reading the data from the CSV file. Then we have an item processor that would be processing the first name to uppercase. Then we have a writer who would be writing the data to the database. Then we have the steps to call reader, writer, and processor, and then we have a job, right? So one thing additionally to add, that in the previous video I wrote a command line runner to run the job. Like, it is auto configuration, right? So Spring Boot auto configures the job whenever you start your program, right? If I don't write a command line runner as well, then also on the start of the application the job would automatically get started and would run the job, right? And your process would get completed. So there is no need to write a command line runner if you need a auto configuration. If you want to run the job on a basis of scheduler, or you have like written a command line job launcher on the basis of some scheduler, then you have to have a property that has been set to false in your application.properties. Then only auto configuration of Spring Boot would be stopped. That we'll do it later on when we will be writing the application.properties. So we are done with the batch config. As I said, I will be running this job through a REST controller. So let me also define a controller package, and in the controller package let me define a class. We can say it as a job controller, right? And in the job controller, what we have to do is, first of all, it would be a REST controller. So let me mark this as a REST controller. Right, and now I need to have a call. Before we call it, we need a few injections. Let's say final, and we need a job launcher, as we did for our command line runner as well. So we need a job launcher, and also, right, so we need to have a private final job, right, and job, right. So we first need to inject it. So let me create a constructor injection. So let me go on source and let me say construct with fields, and let me say generate, right. So this is my constructor, right. So now I need to create a get call, right. So let me create a get call that is public. I'll be returning a response entity to the user, and we'll say run job, right. This is my method. First let me mark this as a get mapping as well. So as I said that it would be a get mapping, so I also need to define. So I'll say run hyphen job, right. So here what we have to do is we have to first define the job parameters, right. So I'll say job parameters. So I need job parameters equals, say, job parameter builder, and here we need to add long, and in the add long we need to pass some uniqueness. So we'll pass time and system dot current millis, right. And after this we'll say two job parameters, right. And then we'll say launch. We have to define the parameters, and then we have to also launch the job. So I'll say job launcher. We have already defined the object, so we'll say job launcher dot run, and we pass job and the job parameters that we have created. We have to simply return it. So we'll say return response entity dot OK, and in the OK we can pass it like, can say batch job has been triggered, right. This could be passed. Can also define on safer part. So let me define a try catch block for this. So let me define a catch block now. Catch, we need the exception. We can simply say response return like a job execution failed, and then we can pass e.get message, right. So this is my controller, right. So when I'll be calling this controller, that is /run job, then it will be going to the batch configuration and running the job, right. It will be reading the data from the CSV file and converting the data, and then loading that data to the database. So I'm done with the controller part as well. So now let's go and let's create. Let me first add properties to application.properties. So I need to add few properties. I need the connection to the database. That is my database would be batch demo. Then username, password, and the driver to the database. Then initializing schema equals to always. That is the metadata initialization into the database. When I run the application, the metadata will automatically get created. Then this property, that is Spring Batch job enabled, that we need to create, that we need to initialize as false to stop Spring Boot auto configure our job, right. So basically if this is true, or if this is not been passed, so it will be auto configured by Spring Boot, and at the time of application startup the job would get triggered, right. So if you want to manually trigger the job, you have to pass this as false, right. So now we are done with the application.properties as well. Now I have already created a CSV file. Let me add it to my content. So this is my CSV file that is in the resources directory. So if I open it, let me show you the file. Let me open it into Excel and let me show you the data that has been written on it. So you can see that few data has been written, like 4 rows are there: first name, last name, email, and age. So these are the data. So when we will be processing the data, the first name would be in the uppercase, right, and all other fields would be as it is in the database. So this is my Excel file. So now we are ready with the code part. We are ready with the Excel file. I have already created the database. So my database is already there. So it is a batch demo database already there, and the metadata you can see it has already been initialized, and a user table is already been created. So you can see that the first name, last name, email, and age. I've created that database. So if I select this database and select all the rows, so it shows that there is no data. So now let me go to my main class, and let me simply go and run the application, and also let me go to the controller to see that what job we have to run. So it is run job. So you can see that it says your application has started, but in the previous video when the application got started, it automatically triggered the job, right? So now I have to manually trigger it. So I am on my browser. So let me say localhost 8080, and let me put this mapping, and let me trigger it. So it says batch job has been triggered. So this is getting, so you can see that now you can see in the logs as well, the batch job has been triggered, and this particular message is coming from here on our browser, right? So the batch job has been triggered. So let's go on to the database, and let me refresh the table. So now you can see that the data is present in the database. So it is like John, Jane, Alice, Bob, all in the caps, and all other fields are as it is in the as same we have seen in the CSV file, right? So this is my data, right? So let me first, so this is my data into the database. So this was it from this video. It was a small example of ETL using Spring Batch. So it was one of the application that the Spring Batch can implement. So it is ETL, right? Taking the data from the Excel file or CSV file and putting it into a database, as we did in the previous example as well, that we were doing the execution of the job in between the two tables of a particular database. Another example could be like one database could be MySQL and the other one could be Postgres, and we can have the insertion of the data or moving of the data, like migration of the data from one database to another. That can also be solved using Batch. So this was it from this video. Hope that you people like, share, and comment on the videos, and if new to the channel, please subscribe and press the bell icon. Hope to see you in the next video. Till then, happy learning.